Welcome, friends. Whether you're out on a walk, running errands, or relaxing at home, it's wonderful to connect with you. Joining us today is Clay Moffat. Now, Clay is an ex-Navy weapons tech turned behavioral coach and author of The Trust Trap. He spent 15 years helping high performers break toxic patterns, stop outsourcing their sanity, and take radical responsibility for their lives. Clay, welcome to Phoenix and Flame.
Thank you. I've actually been looking forward to this for a while now. I'm glad to be here.
There's so much to talk about, and I've got notes on here, but I did want to toss out that also in your bio, you say that you don't sugarcoat things, which is right up my alley because I don't either. That you teach the neuroscience of trust, which sounds so interesting, the psychology of betrayal, and why most people keep screwing themselves over. I mean, my goodness, already there's like 65 things I want to dig into, but let me kind of stop talking so much and let you decide where along your journey do you want to start to kind of let my listeners know a little bit more about you and how you got to be where you are today.
Well, I think we could probably start with the most practical and relevant things, and that will take us way back in the past, and at the same time, we won't go there for long. So, for the most part, overall, I was a train wreck growing up. I was a juvenile delinquent. I was an absolute pain to both my parents. And I decided to join the Navy because the Navy would fix me up and teach me discipline and do all these amazing things, which it did. But that was my theory behind it all. And as with the majority of young men that join the armed forces, especially in Australia, I'm very confident it's the same in the US and the UK as well. They typically rely heavily on insecure young men. And then they can train them and mold them and shape them and direct them in the way that they need to go. And so I fit in perfectly because I was an insecure young man. And it took about 10 years after leaving high school. So I was in the Navy. I was also working in oil and gas as an engineer for a while before it started to dawn on me that I was the author of all my pain. All of it. It didn't matter whether I didn't get a promotion and that was someone else's fault, which is what I believed pretty much for the first 27 years of my life. But the radical reality that slapped me across the face was the only common denominator behind all of these failures that I had was me. There wasn't someone weaving this red thread of fate that was taking me down some mysterious path. It was me. It was my shortcomings. It was my insecurities. It was my dysregulation of my nervous system. It was my lack of understanding about myself and my place in the world. It was a very me-centric world. And to prove the point, I didn't get into coaching to help people. I didn't even start this whole journey to get into coaching. I started this whole journey to learn influence and persuasion, or you could even more aptly put it, manipulation, because I wanted to learn how to get people to do what they said they were going to do. And what people said they were going to do is they said they were going to promote me, and then they didn't promote me. Or they said they were going to do this thing, and they didn't do this thing. And there were multiple things happening through life. And instead of recognizing that it was because they saw something in me and then I didn't follow through, so I obviously didn't have the level that they thought I did, I took it as, well, let me go ahead and figure out how I can manipulate you to do what you said you were going to do. So was this whole victim thing just self-reinforcing until it just couldn't do that anymore because there was just so much evidence to the contrary. I could not ignore it.
Mm-hmm. Listening to you talk so far, I'm hearing a couple of things. One is I run into a lot of people who it's so much easier to blame someone else. It's so much easier in the beginning to blame circumstances. I had a poor childhood, or this person didn't do this for me, or my boss hates me. And we build these narratives about, and not that those things are wrong. They're not wrong. But in terms of the ownership of our issue, that's a really big That's a really big deal because I've said in my keynote, you have to own it to change it.
It's a massive deal. And the key point to me that you just said then was in the beginning. In the beginning, it's very easy to blame other people. And you feel righteous and you feel powerful and you feel like you're justified. And oh, this is, yeah, you're going to get it. And karma's going to get you for what you did to me. Karma's not going to do a damn thing. Like, you're going to have to sort it out yourself.
That's it. Well, and what people think, they get so angry and they have all this, what they feel like this righteous anger, but that's really not a position of power because they're, as long as they feel like someone else is the source of their issue, then they have no power to change it.
Exactly.
So tell us more about I'm really interested in so many things. And so how do you get from you're in the Navy, you're the weapons tech, and then you start noticing people aren't doing what they said they were going to do, like give you a promotion or whatever, fill in the blank. And so then you started noticing there's a discrepancy between what people say they're going to do and what they actually do. And so bring me and my listeners along that journey with you of how that observation kind of helped you to develop into a behavioral coach and ending up authoring a book called The Trust Trap.
Well, the beautiful thing about that, and this is a really good question, is that it did definitely highlight that people were, as they say in the nonverbal world, presenting leakage, right? So who they are on the camera is very different to who they are off the camera. And so this is what I would label in general terms as integrity. You are who you are, as you say you are, regardless of whether you're in front of other people or not. And integrity rarely means convenient, if ever. It is very inconvenient to have integrity. And so for a lot of people, that means, well, it's just this once. And you hear people phrase it in their language. Well, just this once, we're going to do this. Well, you set a standard. You had this rule, and they've just collapsed the rule. So you set precedent for your brain, no one else, for your brain to go ahead and collapse the rule and take the shortcut next time, and then eventually the shortcut becomes the way. And so I was tracking these processes through systems and processes that we had in the military, systems and processes that we had in oil and gas, and then just in general in social constructs. And so we're clear, I am not suggesting that this did not apply to me, because the mirror shows you that, okay, I'm noticing this in everyone else. And I would argue that I absolutely only looked at it through what other people were doing initially. But the transformation came when I realized that it was just a mirror that I was watching. And I was really seeing how I was also not doing that. And so then it became about, okay, well, how do I start being that person? How do I start being that human being? And if I start being that human being, then for lack of a better word, through the energy and the way I show up and the attitude and the commitment that I have, I will likely start being around those other people. Like attracts like. I don't think in the whole of opposites attract kind of thing. I think we tend to accrue and accumulate people that are much like ourselves and on a similar journey to ourselves.
100%. And I've had other podcast guests talking about frequencies and the laws of attraction, how the higher frequency, the higher we're functioning, the more healthily we're functioning, our frequencies are higher. And the more dysfunctional we become, the more base we become, it's the lower frequencies. And so we do attract the frequency that we are. Those frequencies are what is attracted to us. And that, I hear that's what you're saying. I was thinking about the title of your book. Mm-hmm. Talk about the word trap. Why do you call it a trust trap?
Trap to me was a simple choice, purely because when you look at the way the brain works and the way we start to approach life and how we've developed and evolved. And if you take the evolutionary psychology approach, it is a perfect storm of things that have come together that have caused a trap that we can fall into. So, as you already know, the brain likes to conserve energy as much as possible, which means it wants to learn everything as fast as it can and turn it into an automatic pattern. Another name for that is habits. So, habitually, we've learned to go ahead and create these heuristics, these shortcuts, so that we do not conserve energy. And so that comes into play because when you first meet someone, you're consciously paying attention to their movements, to their words, to what's going on, up until the point that you then label that person as trustworthy or they're a trustable person. The second you do that, your nervous system recognizes them as safe and familiar, and you automatically stop paying attention. And what happens at that point in time, this is where the trap happens, is you create a mental image representation of that person, and then that representation carries forward from that point, and that's your, let's say, guidepost that you check in. You've got like it's not how the brain works, I know, but you've got a file click, it goes and pulls the file on Clay. It's like, oh yeah, Clay's trustworthy, that's okay. Oh, Clay's trustworthy, that's okay. And then when my actions, if we're talking about me, start deviating from that mental representation, you go, no, but no, Clay wouldn't do that. No, that's not how it goes. It wouldn't be like that. That's not Clay. Like, he's not that guy. I've got this file. Look at the file. Until it gets to the point where it just slaps you in the face and like it's right in your face that you were betrayed by this other person. And then it's like, okay, yeah, now we need to start paying attention. And the reason why I say betrayed like that with inverted commas is because you weren't betrayed by the other person. Technically, they didn't live up to your expectations. Fair, I'm not going to argue that. But along the way, you were ignoring the signs that your brain was pointing to you. So if there was any betrayal at all, you betrayed yourself. Because you were getting real-time data that was letting you know something was changing. And the trap was you paid attention to this frozen representation instead of paying attention to the information that's coming through in real time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the trap comes in.
Clay, I love that so much because it puts the agency and the power of our interactions with other people and the conclusions that we draw, it puts them in our yard. When I teach people about boundaries, I speak about our yard versus there's a property line. On the other side of that property line is the other person. And so ownership of our own stuff and not owning their stuff is key. And that's exactly what I'm hearing you say.
Yep.
Let me give you some reflection back, because in what you said, I'm hearing and I'm remembering in my mind of stories that I've heard and experiences I've had personally where we would see someone and we would create this positive representation, this positive narrative in our mind. And then that was kind of the example that you gave, that even when their behavior patterns were showing something different, we were kind of blind to that. We did not want to see that because that did not match the representation that we had created, what we wanted them to be. And we've all had those friends, right, that have the girlfriend or boyfriend and we're like in the background going, and they're like, what? They're perfect. And you're going, no. But they don't see it, right? And also I'm interested in your views of the flip side of that. When we see someone that maybe has an interesting appearance, maybe they have a plethora of tattoos, maybe they have a lot of piercings, maybe they have an interesting way that they're wearing their hair, maybe, whatever physically, that sometimes in society, depending on where you are in society, they might suggest, or TV shows might suggest, that someone that has that appearance is not trustworthy. And so we might then go into those scenarios where we are creating that narrative where we're expecting them and we're defining their behavior through a negative lens, versus and they might be the most amazingly trustworthy, selfless person that you ever going to meet in your entire life, who would carry you on their back out of flames, right? But you're already kind of creating this negative narrative. So what has been your experience with the representations, both wanting somebody to be positive, but their behavior patterns didn't represent that, or feeling like you decided someone's negative and not seeing the positive stuff that they're doing.
So there's a couple of ways to look at it. The first way is the brain's a prediction machine. It's always trying to make predictions, but it doesn't make predictions based on what's happening now. It's making predictions based on past traumas, all the underlying beliefs, and how our nervous system has been informed to respond through neuroception. So if it has been through an extremely traumatic childhood, we may be in a state of perpetual distrust, and we're now looking for ways that everyone is going to, for lack of a better word, screw us over.
Right.
Now, that's entirely possible for that individual in that context. They would definitely want to go through a path of getting into a state of regulation and easing their way into a state where they start with a very small environment and then expand that out and then expand that out and start to recognize that, okay, this base experience was a foundation, and that foundation was not necessarily beneficial for you, and it was also not the standard, for lack of a better word, I apologize for that, the standard of human behavior. Likewise, there are people who come through and everyone's perfect and everyone's supportive and everyone's lovely, and that is also not typically the standard of human behavior. So my approach is slightly different. I don't believe there's such a thing as a trustworthy person. I don't believe there's such thing as an untrustworthy person either. I don't even really believe in the whole idea of trust as the way most people do. I don't see it as a characteristic. I don't see it as something that's permanent. I see trust as a process, and it's a process of recognizing a mutually beneficial outcome. As long as there is a mutually beneficial outcome for both parties or all parties involved, I can trust that those other people are going to do the right thing by me because it also benefits them. And people are like, oh, well, that's a very, cynical way to view the world. And I would retort to them, okay, tell me a single thing that you have done in your entire life which had a negative consequence, a purely negative consequence for you, and you still went and did it anyway. And you won't find one. And it doesn't make you selfish, and it doesn't make you rude, and it doesn't make you a psychopath. It makes you a human being. Right now, we're having a conversation. We are having a conversation because I reached out to you because I thought your show sounds amazing. You are fantastic as a host. This is something that I believe I could add value to. So it is beneficial for me to apply because hopefully I get to spread my message, and maybe, just maybe, one person listening really gets what I'm saying, and boom, I've made an impact. And for you, it's beneficial because you're like, this guy seems a bit crazy, he's a bit unorthodox, but I think he's got something valuable. I think my listeners could, so it is mutually beneficial for both of us. Now, as we spoke about before, you don't accept everyone on your show. So I know for a fact that this was a mutually beneficial outcome. Mm-hmm. It's mutually beneficial in business deals. People do not get into business deals unless it's mutually beneficial for both. Unless, of course, we're talking about extortion, and then that's obviously not mutually beneficial, but you get the idea, right? Relationships, mutually beneficial. There's always some kind of benefit going on, and it's not a bad thing. It's a brilliant thing, and the frame that I approach through life is that I can trust everyone, and I literally mean every single human being on the planet. There's not a single person I can't trust. I can trust every human to do what's right by them. Likewise, they can trust me to do what's right by me. So what I'm searching for, and the reason why trust to me is a process and why I'm always looking, is to see, do I have alignment with this person? What do they get as a benefit from trusting me, and what do I get as a benefit from trusting them? Are we still in alignment? Yes, fantastic. Let's keep going. Are we still in alignment? Their behavior is indicating otherwise. Let's have a conversation, and now we can part ways as friends, because it's not you backstabbed me, you blindsided me, you did this to me. It's we've run our course. Thanks so much. This has been amazing. I wish you the best for the next part of your journey.
Wow. That I love everything that you just said, and my brain is going tick 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 as you're talking. Oh, okay. So, two things I want to toss out. One is I think that when we talk about trust, that we're trusting someone to meet our needs. What I just heard you say was you trust everyone to meet their own need, which is what that's what they're supposed to do. So that's a different POV right there. Are we trusting someone to see to their own need and deciding, are we in alignment? Is me trusting myself to see to my needs, you trusting me, trusting you to meet your needs, and then are we then aligned? That is a healthier place. It's a safer place versus, yeah. I think most people, when they talk about trust, they're talking about trusting someone to meet, I'm trusting you to meet my needs, which that's nobody's responsibility. It's not other people's responsibility to meet our needs. It's not our responsibility to meet other people's needs. And that's a boundary statement. You know, our yard versus someone else's yard. We're responsible for our yard. They're responsible for their yard, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And I also wanted to toss out, well, first of all, before I bring up my next thing, when you talk about just trust in general, mm-hmm. Clay, to be perfectly honest with you, in terms of just trust, like trusting someone to be healthy all the time, trusting someone to be there for me, to meet my needs, to always be a safe place. I don't trust anyone on the planet all the way, 100%. I don't trust myself 100%. Right. I mean, if we're brutally honest with our own thoughts and feelings, we can't even trust our own thoughts sometimes because they're fickle and our feelings are fickle and they kind of go back and forth. And so it's like this whole concept of trust, what exactly does that mean? And also you talked about trust being dynamic, that we need to like align it and reevaluate it, which is so much like how I talk about boundaries, because we can have a relationship with someone. And you were talking about relationships earlier. And if we have an initial relationship with someone and this someone is quite dysfunctional and we've set the pretty hard boundary, we put it kind of way out, we push their property way kind of far from ours, but then we start communicating and we start saying, hey, you know, this is how I feel about what you said. This is what I was thinking about what you said the other day, or this is how it kind of hit me. Then we open up conversation. And if they listen and they decide, you have an interesting point of view, I might decide to change some of my habits. And then we're like, well, we'll wait and see. And so then they change their habits. We change some of our habits. And then we determine, hey, I can actually move that person a little closer. I think I can move their property a little bit closer to mine now. I can lighten up the boundary a little bit because they're behaving in a way that is healthier now. And so that is a dynamic process too. And that's what I was hearing you say about trust based on ongoing dynamic behavioral shifts.
Yeah, I'd say that's a really, really accurate way of summarizing what I said. Very much so. And
awesome.
More to the point, with this side of trust and taking ownership of what you can do and taking ownership of how you are in alignment with other people, you're putting yourself into a position where you can't fall into the trust trap because you can't lock into that mental representation because you're constantly checking for this alignment. Okay, do we have alignment? Yeah, cool, let's go. Are we still in alignment? Yes. Are we still in alignment? No. Okay. Do I want to fix it? Is it even any point in fixing it? Is there anything to even fix, or have we just run our course? And so it can change the way that you show up. And with the expectations piece, it's a nightmare because let's just take the word trust. The majority of people that I've found that I've worked with and interacted with in the world, if I say, okay, what is your definition of trust? And you tell me what it is, and then I tell you what mine is, they could be completely different. But we mean like, yeah, I trust Dan. Dana trusts me. Yeah, we trust each other. Yeah, we're same. That's the surface level structure, and no one ever digs into the depth of the subsurface structure of what it actually means, how we know we've got trust, what showing up means for trust, what we're going to do. Like, that's all just assumed. And it's assumed on so many levels that you get these people going, well, I can't trust them anymore because, yeah, they don't even know what trust is. Like, yeah, because you never actually explained it to each other. You never even agreed on it. You just agreed on the label that covers the very top, like the icing on, we call it the icing on the cake, the cherry on top. And then the whole cake and the icing underneath was just left. Like, you didn't agree what kind of icing you wanted. You didn't agree what kind of cake you wanted. You didn't agree what flavor of the cake you wanted. You didn't agree on the date that you wanted the cake. Like, all these things are thrown out the window, and they're just focusing on the cherry.
Mm. I love this, and I love the way that you're giving a lot of examples of how we are the ones that have agency, that in this dynamic, in this interaction, in this deciding, that the agency is ours to make that decision, which means we have safety, which is another boundary statement, is because when we're deciding if we have an alignment with someone else, we are evaluating the situation. That is our choice. That is our evaluation. And we have the right, and I could easily argue the responsibility, to really kind of do that every so often. And that brings us safety. That our safety doesn't come from someone else. Like you said something earlier in your bio, you said for people to stop outsourcing their sanity. And I think when what we're talking about here is our safety is in our own yard. It's our ability to check in with other people and communicate, like you're just saying. Well, the examples that you gave, saying, okay, what is the cherry? What is the icing? What is the cake? What are we looking at the same thing? And I really love the way that you're talking about alignment, because I'm hearing in my head life chapters. Because I don't know about you, I'm imagining you're probably the same. You've lived long enough to know that you were one kind of person, you had certain kind of needs and expectations and experiences and desires in one chapter of your life. But when you enter another chapter, that shifts. And so you might have a friend or a family member or a coworker or something that was really aligned with you in one chapter, but you go down another path. Your life goes down, you take kind of like a right turn and do something different with your life. And this friend doesn't take that turn with you. And so it's not that anybody's judging anyone. We're simply saying that the alignment is no longer there. My life has gone into another chapter. And so maybe we don't need to be in a close relationship. Is that what you're saying? I think that's what I'm hearing.
Yep. That's a broader scope of what I'm saying. But in a nutshell, that's exactly what I'm saying. The point is that, and you're being very, very macro level with it, which is beautiful. It's the same in a micro level. It doesn't even need to go for chapters. It can be even smaller iterations than that. So, for example, with some people, they change jobs like they change their underwear, right? And so they'll go for, well, maybe not that frequently, but, 2 jobs a year, 2 jobs every 4 years. So it's quite frequent, but that's still the same chapter of their life. It's this phase of their life kind of thing. For other people, it could be with girlfriends, or boyfriends, or partners, or whatever it is. But what I have noticed is that this alignment piece, things can change rather drastically, very, very quickly, depending on what happens. So, to maybe slightly verge off topic, but hopefully not, there are many places in Thailand where you can do psilocybin assisted therapy. And there are people that are going on journeys and having this experience. And that experience, through itself, will actually close a chapter and start another chapter. They had no idea that was going to happen before they went in to do the therapy, but they're extremely certain that it has happened as soon as they get on the other side. Like, wow, just completely different. This has changed. This is shifting. This is going through here. And it creates this whole chapter. So they weren't even aware of the chapters happening at that point in time. For me, I was married, then divorced, then I was with a lovely French girl for a few years, and then I was single and I was disappearing to Bali and Mexico and going traveling and surfing around the world. And then I went out on a date, and the lovely lady I went on a date with, she fell pregnant on the first date. And so here I am still in Thailand, and that was a completely new chapter in my life. It was not planned, it was not eventuated, but it is absolutely a new chapter. Parenthood is very much a chapter for the majority of people.
Yeah.
But breaking up with a girlfriend or boyfriend might not necessarily be a new chapter, because you could still be going out and doing the same things with the same friends, but there is no alignment with that person anymore. There might be no alignment with friends anymore because now they've got a partner and they're spending more time with their partner, so there's no alignment. You see what I mean? Like it can be like
I do.
both things as well.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense. Now, how do you feel like people unknowingly sabotage their own success from your experience and what you're talking about?
In which way? Because there's quite a few. So to get in the most direct way, I think will be the most useful for people. People sabotage their success. You said something brilliant before. You said, I don't know if I ever really trust myself because thoughts are fickle things. And I couldn't agree with you more. Thoughts are very fickle things and they can change very quickly. They can change based on your mood. They can change based on your sleep, based on the level and the quality of the neurotransmitters that are pumping through your brain, which is affected by your diet, by your exercise, by how much sun you're getting, by the time of the year. Like there are so many things that can start to change these things, right? So I agree with that. I would also add a contingency to it. And there is a truth. And I think everyone will call it a different thing. If you go on down the very spiritual route, some people will say it's a source. If you go down another route, some people will say it's God. For me, it just comes up as a truth. And there are thoughts that I hear from myself that don't sound like me, that I think are very much interjects. And they interjects from my conditioning as a little kid, and I've accepted them as being my own, and I've learned to work through them. And then there are thoughts that are quiet but profound. And I have these from time to time. And more often than not now, because I'm paying more and more attention to these. And these thoughts almost always seem to be true. And I'll give you an example, which is a very tangible example. It's not very fun, but it's a very tangible example. So I coach, I do trainings, I do consulting, and I also day trade. And day trading can be highly addictive, massive dopamine fluctuations, a whole bunch of other things. It was one of the best things I've ever learned for emotional regulation and regulating my nervous system, paying attention to neurotransmitters, because you could really fry your system very quickly with it. And what I realized was I've been studying this stuff for quite a while now, and I'm looking at these patterns and I'm paying attention to what I need for the entry signal. And I'd just be sitting there and this thought would kind of like enter. And I'm like, no, it's not right. And it turns out it was right. And the majority of times I'm getting these signals. And these signals, and that's why I say it's like this truth. And the truth for me is just my subconscious. It's the actual part of me that is like wanting to do the right thing by me. And I understand and I appreciate that a lot of people have very negative self-talk. I used to be one of those people. I used to lambast myself, abuse myself, beat myself, slap myself all the way around the proverbial mental death chamber. But I spent a lot of time going through and retraining myself and coaching myself on how to coach myself as opposed to just be this abusive psychopath inside my head to myself. And I managed to do that through a process where I took a step back and I said, okay, do we, I mean, me, my unconscious, all parts of myself, do we want to die? And people are like, well, that's a very intense question. I think it's pretty pragmatic when you understand where I'm coming from. And the answer was no, we don't. I said, okay. So then could we say that no matter what is set up here, we always have the best intention for all of us? Everything that's said is coming from the best intention. And we got agreement. I'm like, okay. So then would it be fair to say that all we need to do is learn how to speak to each other? And I got this, yes. And it was just like a weight that came off. Like I just felt so free, so light, so in tune. Like, okay, so let's work on how we do that. Let's figure out how we can learn to talk to each other so we're all on the same page. And so that's why this truth, as I call it, this subconscious that's coming up, it's my brain getting access to parts of my brain that have always been there, but have been ignored. And I'm learning how to get back in touch with that. And it's making life better because I'm paying attention to things with other people that I might have been ignoring, even though I've been studying nonverbals for many years now. I'm paying attention to the substructure of the language that they're saying. I'm paying attention to multiple different facets, but it all came from connecting to this truth and trusting that and getting in touch with that trust. Because I really, truly feel that when you can get in and you realize at the most very depth of who you are, that you absolutely can trust who you are innately within yourself, it gives you a sense of personal liberty that nothing else will ever give. And then that gives you like a freedom to start moving forward. Now, that was a very long way to answer your question, but I hope it does.
But I loved it because what I'm hearing you say is, because I use this a lot in my practice as internal family systems. That's what you're talking about.
IFS, yep.
And I've actually have that in my keynote is called becoming the CEO of your own mental boardroom. Nice. And so, and I use that to help groups of people to understand those different parts. And we use the term we, us, and so I love everything that you just said. So before I make sure that my listeners know how to get access to you for when this podcast is over and they go, oh my gosh, I love everything Clay has to say. From your perspective, from your journey, share with us an example of how boundaries either helped you on your journey at some leg of it along the way, or looking back, how you recognize that you didn't have boundaries and it might have obstructed you, caused you some problems along the way.
So I can do it with both in one. So in 2019, 2020, I started developing a mobile app. I was this big, all-knowing, swinging, you-know-what. I was so amazing, and I'd hit 7 figures in my coaching practice, and I had a lot of money to burn, and that's what I told myself, and that's exactly what I did. I burnt through just under $750,000 trying to get this app off the ground with marketing teams and development and all this kind of thing. And the boundary was that I had told myself that I was going to deliver this thing. And I'd made a promise and I made a commitment that it was going to happen. So I hired this project manager who was kind of a friend. And then the development didn't go as planned. And it kind of completely fell apart. And I didn't know who was lying, the project manager or the team. And then the project manager quit. So I was like, must have been the project manager. So then I started working with the team. I was like, no, it was the project manager and the team. Okay, good to know. Lesson learned. But I was still committed to this app. So I'm like, okay, the boundary now is I trusted these people wrongly. So this time, next time around, I'm going to go and vet the project manager. I'm going to see what projects they've worked on. I'm going to check and see if those people were happy. So I set up this boundary. Thought I'd done a great job. Team were working. They were firing along. We get to launch date. I don't have an app. What's going on? This doesn't make any sense. Oh, no, it's the back end stuff. And I didn't know anything about coding, so it was a big problem. So I'm like, okay, this ran on. The team was in Ukraine. This was before the Ukraine war. Then it ran into the start of the Ukraine war. Then they used that as an excuse for the reason why it wasn't developed. Like it was supposed to be developed 3 months ago, so I don't really see this. Anyway, needless to say, I shut that down. Like, okay, now I've got more boundaries. This is how I'm going to do it. So then I went and hired my own team. I hired the developers directly. I hired a CTO who was a person I knew and trusted and connected with and had seen the results that he produced consistently. Hired him to liaise and put my idea forth, and things went firing on all cylinders. We were moving ahead, but at this stage, I ran out of money because that was $40,000 a month, and this was the third time, and we just couldn't get the project off the ground. Had I started that off in the first way, it probably would have cost me $250,000 and I would have a working app, but it didn't. So I learned boundaries along the way. I learned what I could and could not put up with. And at the same time, by not having the boundaries, and also there's another piece to that, which I think is important for people to understand when it comes to boundaries. And that is that authority and novelty will make you break boundaries very quickly. So you may have a boundary with someone, but if you perceive someone to be an authority, and I don't necessarily mean, so we're clear, like a hierarchical authority, like a judge or a police officer or something like that, but someone that you deem as a subject matter expert in something that you're not, so you can't necessarily pull them apart, and B, more importantly, someone that carries themselves and is who they say they are on camera, off camera, and they ask you to start doing things, you will likely start doing those things because of how people respond to authority. It's built into our DNA. If you go back through all the years, every tribe has had a chief. Mm-hmm. And people respected the chief because if you didn't respect the chief, you were kicked out of the tribe, you're ostracized, you wouldn't survive. So we have a massive need for social approval. And especially from people that are an authority in and of themselves. So I think it's really important to understand that if you, I'm going to regret saying this, if you fall victim to something like that, recognize that that is similar in the way that the trust trap is, that that's something that's hardwired into us. It's not something you can go, you know what, I'm not going to listen to authority. And if you don't believe me, look at Stanley Milgram's experiment. It's been replicated about 16 times all throughout the world with similar results. We are suckers for authority. It's just how we are.
Mm-hmm. That's such a good point. Now, Clay, what I have on here is trusttrapbook.com in terms of the website that you want my listeners to go to, and they want to find so much more out about you and what you have to offer and all that. Is that where you want them to go? Trusttrapbook.com.
That's the best website for now because you can reach me directly through that website. I'll also put you to the book if you want to know more about the book. My website, claymoffat.com, is being rebuilt. So you can go there, but you're not going to find much out about me because it's mostly under construction.
Got you. Clay, this has been just like I thought it was going to be. Just fun and high energy and practical and useful and direct and all the wonderful things that I love and transparent. Thank you for being willing to spend your precious time and wisdom and energy and effort to come here and be with me and my listeners on Phoenix and Flame.
Thank you so much for having me, Dan. It's been amazing. I have very much enjoyed myself. And I'm looking forward to having a chat with you in the future, whenever that may be.
I'm sure we could do another one with no problem whatsoever. Now, listeners, I know you have heard so many things Clay say that you're thinking, oh my gosh, I have a best friend, I have a relative, I have a coworker that 100% needs to hear what Clay Moffat is saying. Take this podcast episode, copy and paste the link, send it in text, send it an email, put it on your favorite social media platform so we can grow our Phoenix and Flame community and let people know you are not alone. I hope your day's been great. I hope the rest of your day is fantastic. I'm Dana on Phoenix and Flame.